Welcome to the Production Talk podcast with me, Jan of mixartist.com.au. In this podcast series, we celebrate the modern way of producing music. We want to talk about all things related to songwriting, recording at home, and music production. So if you produce your music at home, this is the place to be. Please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends. This is the Production Talk podcast, episode 58. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Since you like podcasts, I thought I might recommend something amazing to you. My friend Nick of Byron Music, who is also the mastermind behind the Byron Music Festival, has launched his own podcast. The first 2 episodes are out, and it's all about the music and the culture in the Bundjalung country. Among the guest speakers are Naomi Moran, Peter Wood, Nathan Kay, Dr. Leigh Carriage, Jarmby, Mark Robertson, and Christian Tancred. You can find the episodes on the website byronmusicfestival.com.au/podcast. Enjoy the listen. Okay, so now let's head over to this week's interview. Enjoy! Welcome back to another episode of the Production Talk podcast. At the beginning of this episode, as always, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country that we are meeting on today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. With me today is Mr. Mike Watson of the band WHARVES. Welcome.
Hello, Jan. How are you going?
I'm really good. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me in.
Well, it's fantastic to have you. I'm dying to find out more about you and your band and the entire story. I understand you just came back from a big tour in the UK.
Yeah, it's been about 2 months. We've been back now. We were over there for a month. Touring around. It was so good to be back overseas playing shows and
excellent.
Still buzzing 2 months later.
Fantastic. Oh, that's really good to hear. But you know what? Why don't we just go back to the beginning of your career and talk about you and how old were you when you started playing instruments?
My family owned music shops kind of growing up.
Yeah.
So instruments were always around, but it was never pushed upon us as kids.
Okay.
But there was always guitars and pianos, and I would dabble, but never really kind of picked it up properly until I was 13. Started playing guitar and just was completely obsessed, like 8-hour days after school, just like not putting it down. And
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I was like a really shy kid through school, and it was kind of my my outlet that I just loved. And yeah, started going to shows and Big Day Out and gigs in Brisbane. It was just like, that's what I want to do. And eventually kind of got there. And I remember it was like coming to the end of school, everyone was starting to travel. And I was like, I'm not going to go to Europe until I can go there with my band and play. And it ended up happening. I was like setting crazy goals. And
wow, that's fantastic. When did you meet your band members and then how did the band start?
So WHARVES started in, I think it was 2016. We'd kind of worked in a few projects together in different forms, but this outfit was 2016, just after I finished studying with you at SAE. So I used the knowledge from there to kind of, I guess, bring it to the band a bit. But so we met through Southern Cross Uni though, because I had a few friends who would go up there, and we all kind of just like-minded people, same influences, kind of same mentality on life, I guess, and we all just got along. So we were like, let's see how this goes.
And you just started jamming, and then the band formed out of that?
Yeah, we had.
How did it happen?
I think from a former band before that, we had a couple of songs left over that were like going to be for the older band, but we were like, oh, let's put this in this new one because we kind of like these 2 songs. And then we started kind of jamming, coming up with new material and wanting to just see whatever happened naturally with the sound. And then I think the first thing we released was self-produced, but it was pretty raw and rough. But
okay,
we had a gig booked, and it was like, that's kind of how we came up with the name, because it was so last minute. We were just like, oh, let's go with this name. It looks good written down. And
It does.
As soon as we said it on stage, we were like, we've made a horrible mistake, because it's like, you can't understand it through a microphone. Even in person, it's hard to tell someone the name. So like,
yeah, right.
So I go, yeah. They go like, oh, what's your band name? And I go, WHARVES, WHARVES. Like, I'm so fast at like spelling it for people.
Oh, cool. And what's the meaning behind the name?
It was actually we had the idea for the press shots first. We wanted to be like in water because we're like at the coast, and it was something in another friend's like Facebook chat where they liked the word wharves. It was like whatever's kind of spelt wrong. And then it just came up as a suggestion, and we were like, all right.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah.
So it's not much of a amazing, deep thing. We're just kind of like, yeah.
It's catchy. That's what matters. So that's great. Nice. Describe the sound of your band to everybody who hasn't listened to your band yet. What can we expect when we turn on your music?
We are very excited by a lot of sounds, and it's a bit of a melting pot. But the main kind of mission is to make people dance, but it's with usually either fast-paced, like post-punk kind of indie rock stuff, probably like Block Party, Strokes, that 2000s era of music. And then we started digging a bit deeper and going, who influenced those bands? So we got into like the late 70s post-punk kind of movement, and then through the 80s as well, when electronic kind of got into it, and then like the 90s Manchester sort of dance music thing. So we've kind of taken elements of all that and experimented a fair bit now.
Wow. That is a lot of different influences all together. But, it makes sense to me. Now I see actually your music in a different light. So, the associations that I had from some of your songs were more the psychedelic rock in some ways. But, now that you took me through the decades, that makes a lot of sense.
We just kind of... I'm very, like, Radiohead's my all-time favorite band, and I kind of view them as a band that has taken every genre and just picked out like the best little bits and just mashed it all together. And so I'm like, if I can be like a sponge and listen to everything and find things I like in it, then I'm potentially will make music that's maybe hasn't been heard before, or it's interesting. So like, I'm continually banned from the auxiliary chord at parties and at work because like I put on a Chopin piece the other day, which isn't that out there, but then there's like Mertz Bao. He's just like this crazy Japanese noise producer, and it's like Penderecki as well, where it's just like such hard music to listen to, but it's incredible that there's a market out there and you can kind of hone in and use those extremities into like a contemporary style.
Well, it's definitely a journey. So if anybody is really interested now, get to the end of the episode, scroll down in the show notes and click the link. We'll put everything in there so you can have a listen straight away. I guess, you really got to hear it to understand it fully, I reckon. It's an amazing sound. Can you introduce your bandmates?
Yeah, so we've got on vocals and guitar, it's Matt Collins. So Matt, sometimes he'll write a song with like an acoustic and come in and we'll kind of workshop it together. And other times it's just me and him getting together, or sometimes it's all of us kind of writing together. Scott's on bass, and now he's playing Moog as well, or like various synths, which is good. And Scott's been doing all the artwork for the last release as well.
Cool.
And all the video clips as well. So he's become the kind of, the director of visuals.
He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, definitely. And then Fraser is on drums, and he has kind of been running all the online kind of social media aspect. So we, as much as we're a rock band, we're a very nerdy kind of business thing. Like the amount of Excel spreadsheets we share between us is just stupid. Like,
yeah, right.
It's a whole nerdy backend behind it.
Oh, look, I would love to hear a bit more about that. So it's not just that you hang out in the rehearsal room and make noise.
No.
You sort of split up different business areas among each other and you tag team. Is that right?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, cool.
We've got a manager as well, so he can denote, I guess, tasks to each of us. But I think I guess we might have realized what each one's strengths were and weaknesses, and we went like, let's kind of split this up a bit and work all together. So we often set tasks for the band, and it's pretty nerdy.
Cool. Well, That's really interesting to see that, you've got basically an infrastructure built around the band. Is this all online or?
It's mostly online because so I live in Lennox and then Scott lives in Lismore and Fraser lives at Tweed and Matt lives at the Gold Coast now. So we're a bit spread out where I think maybe 2018 or 2019 we're all pretty based around here. So it was much easier to meet up midweek and, it wasn't a big drive for someone to go to a rehearsal where now it's like...
it's a bit of a mission.
We've kind of shifted from working midweek to kind of booking out like a whole weekend and getting together and really being like maximum productivity, but then it's like planning it beforehand. Like we've got, hundreds of demos on Dropbox and it's like, all right, choose your best or choose your favorite parts and what would you like to work on yourself? Or like, what's your favorite song coming in? So everyone will be a bit motivated as well to be like, what am I going to get out of this? How do I feel?
That's really cool. You're really organized as a band. That's really good to hear. And who came up with that system? Did it just evolve, or
it's just evolving? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like
you just started somewhere, and that's the way it grew.
I think we're quite open as a band, probably because we've known each other for so long now. Like I've known a couple of the guys for 10 years. So, yeah, we've learned not to have an ego at all. It's like you can say anything and, you're not taking it to heart. And, yeah, it's not like, say if you're writing a song and you come up with a part, no one's going to be offended if it's like, hey, like, I don't think that's going to suit. Like, maybe try it this way. Because I think sometimes a lot of bands will be like, I came up with this. This is a personal attack on me.
Baby.
You're trying to change this part. Whereas, I think in our group, we kind of sit back and go like, what do you have like to kind of offer? Like, where's your view coming from? Which is good.
Talk me through your releases so far. When did you start putting out songs?
So after the first self-produced release, we did a song with Paul Pilsnenix, which was at SAE when I was just finishing up.
Yep, big shout out to Paul. He's an amazing guy. He actually stopped by the studio here the other day. We had a chat together.
I haven't seen him for ages.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. Very talented.
Yeah, so we did a song with him and released it, and then...
There was a single, therefore?
Yeah, it was a single. It was...
Yeah. And what about the release before, the self-produced one? I'm very curious to hear more about that.
We just did it at home just because it was a demo. I don't think there was any real drums. It was all just MIDI drums, and we're just like... It was so wrong, but it just had a good feeling about it. So we were like, let's just put it online and see how it goes. We've got a show to play, so let's have something to promote. And I think it was the previous kind of band we were working in had started to become a bit like real serious. And it was like, we're working in like kind of proper studios, proper producers. And then we were like, let's go as far as we can from that and just go purely on feeling.
Great.
But then, once we did that, we were like, okay, let's get back in the studio again. I think it was kind of a budget thing as well because we didn't have any money. And
of course.
Once we started playing shows, we were like, all right, let's invest it into the band. And then, after Paul, I forget how we got onto him, but we heard about this guy in Melbourne called Stephen Schramm. He had worked with Paul Kelly and San Cisco, a bunch of other like great bands, and we were like, cool, let's fly him up and do a song together. And it was the moment of working with him when like we did our first like tracking and we heard what we did back like in our headphones. We're just like, oh my goodness, it was like spine tingling because it was just, I don't know, something about his producing skills is amazing, and it's like he has just such a good gut like sense of a song and what to get out of it. And it was just like, wow, we sound like a real band. Like all of us still are just blown away by that sound we heard back.
That's fantastic. And where was that recorded?
That was at Music Farm, that one. And then we worked with him pretty much from, that was end of 2016 through to, I think the last session we had with him would have been 2019. And in that time, he ended up moving up here with his family because we kept flying him up. But then I think he loved it so much, he was just like, Full state.
It's a sticky place here, isn't it?
He's just moved to New Zealand though, so he's just left the area.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it was pretty much, that was like, for as long as we could see, it was pretty much us working with him was the plan until the pandemic kind of hit. And then usually our touring would pay for like our recordings. So once that dried up and we had no shows in the foreseeable future, we were like, cool, we'll pay for it ourselves. But then there was the whole kind of job security, really. When the pandemic first hit, it's like, cool, am I going to have work in 6 months or something? I'm just going to throw money into recordings we can't promote or tour. So we were like, oh, we've got these skills, like, because all the other guys had studied music as well, so they knew a bit about production. And we were like, screw it, let's try it ourselves. If it doesn't work, fine. But let's try it. See what we can come up with.
Okay, so you went back to self-producing during COVID.
Yeah.
Out of necessity. I guess like a lot of people did at that time. Yeah, cool. And how did that turn out?
We were really stoked. It was definitely scary because, like Shrami's won ARIAs like for best engineer, like for Australia. And I've gone from that like level to me just being like, how do I kind of do this at a proper level? Because I'd always done demos for the band, but not like trying to be up against the best producer in Australia. But it was like, we're kind of like, it's going to have its own sound anyway, so no one's going to sit there and go like, oh no, this doesn't sound like a high-end product or something. It'll just sound different if the songs are good enough, or if the parts are there, people will accept it. But yeah, we were very happy with how it first started turning out. But yeah, it was challenging with all the lockdowns because two of the guys were in the Gold Coast or in Queensland, so...
Of course, and then they were on the other side of the border. Yeah, I see.
So we had our drummer and singer up there, and so we had the bass player and me down here, and I was doing all the production. So we, in between, like, bubbles and all that stuff, we would kind of take demos we'd written from over the years and certain times there, and a lot of them were, like, started with... Or we were kind of going for a Manchester sort of psychedelic dance thing we wanted to do. So they would start with like a kind of dancey 90s drum loop, and then the song would be written around that, all kind of in Ableton without any kind of band really. And then once we could get together, we'd start kind of replacing things upon the Ableton session.
And how did you exchange the session files? Just via Dropbox, or?
I think we're using Dropbox. Yeah. Mainly Dropbox for that. The singer so Matt did a lot of vocals at home, which was good because he had a kind of setup, but Fraser didn't really have ability to do drums where he was, so it was...
Yeah, that's hard.
If there was any opening between the kind of lockdowns where he was allowed to come down or just any chance we could to do drums, we were like, all right, we have to do it before something changes because we need these drums.
Yeah, right. And you got it done?
Yeah, we got it done.
Okay, so...
It took a long time for certain songs, but I think because we moved through a few spaces as well, we got like gifted like squatters' rights almost for this like this storage shed in Ballina, which seemed like a great idea until we tried to record drums in it, and it was just like a booming like...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it didn't sound good, so... We were trying to go for this tight, like, dancey sound, but the drums were just a mess. So I had to gate everything. It just didn't sound that good. So we took, like... It started with, like, the 90s kind of electronic drums. Then we did these, like, huge booming drums over the top, which I ended up gating to sound like the 90s drums. And then I put more of, like, the electronic drums over the top again. So it was just, like...
Layers.
Yeah. If anyone saw my sessions from these, like, songs, like... They would just grimace. They're horrible.
Yeah, right. Well, that's creative processes. They can be messy. That's fine.
There's probably 200 tracks named audio track.
Ooh, okay, well, that's going to be a bit hard to manage. Yeah, right. Okay. So you've pretty much tried everything in the book. You tried to produce at home. You know, you did remote production with your band without even seeing each other. And you worked in some of the most amazing studios with some of the most amazing engineers. Break down the pros and cons to us. What are the advantages of producing at home?
I felt like I was being less creative in the studio because Shrami, our producer, was having kind of more control over I play guitar mainly in the band, and I love to make things weird and experiment. But with like studio costs, to take a large risk is an expensive thing if it doesn't happen.
Yes.
So I was trying to do like a band I really like. It's called Battles, and it's a lot of like looping and weird guitar stuff where it's like kind of glitching and it's just like horrible sounds, but you try have something so far extreme and kind of hone it in to make it nice and listenable. And I guess with the pressure of, say, if a studio is like $500 per day and you're doing that for 4 days and you want to get 2 songs out of it, you know, there's a bit of pressure there to get it right. And it's just like, if it doesn't, it's just wasted money.
So from a decision-making point of view, you had to be a bit more conservative, a bit more, stay in a safe area?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. And at home, you have more time to waste, I guess, and you can experiment, and if there's failures, it doesn't cost you money.
So it was a very fun process during the lockdowns because I wasn't working as well. I was just getting to wake up every day and make music, which was going on to our EP, so then I could just do something ridiculous, and you wake up the next day and go, it didn't work. That's fine.
Okay, start again.
But yeah, there's some definite weird stuff on that EP.
Well, that's really good. I'm sure you learned a lot of things along the way, and who knows, that might be useful in future productions.
Yeah, definitely.
You never know.
I'm working with, there's a girl, because I make some electronic music as well. I've worked with this amazing singer and writer called, her artist name is Frankie Canure. And we just spent last week recording an EP for her. And she had started this track with someone else, and it sounded amazing. Like, it sounded really produced, and I'm like, this is done. Like, why do you want me to do anything on? And she's like, it's just not me. It's not kind of chaotic enough. So the song started with an ambient pad, just like a synth patch. And I was like, cool, let's replace that sound with something that we can just come up with here. So instead I did like a guitar loop, kind of droning, but it's like shifting out and in tune. So I did that twice, and then the space I was working out of was my parents' like basement, and they live next to a school. So all these kids were outside playing. So she went outside and sampled that, and I was like, oh, we could use that. And I learned this technique a while ago where you can kind of make a playable instrument out of any space by notching like frequencies a few times. It becomes like a resonant drone.
Yeah, right.
So I took that sound of the kids and played it as like an organy thing with this like morphing texture of them like playing. So it's, instead of this ambient pad now, it's like this real weird kind of thing, but it was more honest to us because it was like where we're at. Like no one else is going to have that sound in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty much impossible to reproduce. Yeah, right. That's really cool. Share more ideas. What other crazy things were you up to?
I was doing like just a lot of reverse piano, which was fun. You come up with a part, just flip it, and then just keep doing that. I was playing, there's a guitar effect called a Digitech Whammy. It's like a pitch shifter. I've got another pedal. Oh no, I was using an EBow, which is like a magnetic guitar thing. So you rest it on a string and it just sounds like a violin, I guess, like a bow, endless sustain.
Sustains infinitely, basically.
So I like tuned the guitar so I could just rest the EBow on a string. So then that was feeding into like, I think a chorus pedal, so I was warping a bit. And then on the pitch shifter, I was selecting the like harmony notes to create the melody. So like,
oh wow,
it was really hard to play because you're like twisting a knob like one parameter left and then right and then left, and then it has to go like 4 down to get to the 5th, or like I think it was the 3rd and 4th, no, 2nd and 3rd.
So you played melodies basically with a pot, with a dial. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Was it a stepped one, or was it a variable pot?
I think it's stepped.
Stepped, okay.
But like a part of the melody had to shift down like 5 notches to like get it there, and then it would like trill on 2 notes and then go back up.
Yeah, right.
It was challenging. I was like,
I can't wait to hear that. And that ended up in a song?
Yeah.
Cool.
I opened a can of beer. Actually, there was a word between after and party. It was like, and I was like, oh, it's like a party thing. I'm like, oh, like this could be fun. So I had a beer and cracked it open, and it had like that classic can opening sound, and all the other music drops out for the can. So it's just like this,
Yeah,
and then
cool.
it all comes back in.
Oh, that's great.
My my favorite one in the WHARVES stuff was I was leaving. The song was called New Road, and I think Matt wrote it about going to different like life directions. And I had my last shift at work because I was working this good job, but I was like, I can't see like it getting any further. Like, you know, there's no real reason to stay, but there's no real reason to leave as well. So I was like, you know, I should finish this job. And then I had this idea of recording the drive home to put it in the song, just as like a sentimental type of thing. But then I was like, oh, I should use that like kind of that technique of notching the frequencies to make it a playable thing like during the song, so it could maybe play the chords. But then I took that further and I was like, what happens if I use that sound as a vocoded effect that Matt could then sing through for the vocals? So he's like singing through the sound of me driving home after quitting work.
Crazy.
But you can't hear it, but it's in there.
Yeah, cool. Nice. Wow, that makes, that must make your music so unique in many ways, because there's no way to replicate this any other way. People
for sure.
who have the same DAW still can't do that.
Yeah.
I love that. That really makes it personal and, indistinguishable.
I think, as the band, we've started, I think we've all kind of done a bit of that soul searching kind of growing up, where it's like, like, who cares if you become like successful or not? Like if you are living off it, it's just like whether you're enjoying it enough. And it's like, if you get like the enjoyment I get from doing stuff like that, where it means something, and I'm so excited to tell people about it, because you don't discover it by listening to it. It's just all buried in there.
Cool.
But it just makes me very, very happy.
Well, it's just an audio podcast, but you've got a huge smile on your face right now. Just describe that to everybody. You're obviously really excited about it. That's really cool. Nice one. And are you planning to take these techniques into future productions as well?
Yeah, definitely. For this, like, because the last Wolves thing was done so separately, and we're predominantly known as being a live band. Like, usually we're pretty high energy, and we like make a lot of noise and jump around and on stage. So I think we're trying to, because last recording was so not that, we want to go back to kind of doing more of a live band sort of thing, but then bringing in some of that other stuff later. Can you talk about future plans at the moment? Yeah, definitely. What's the future going to bring for Wolves? So we're going to try to do an album. We've just started doing some demos, which is exciting. Our bass player just broke his knee on stage a few weeks ago. Oh, no. Which was horrible. It was our first show back in Australia. We were meant to be on tour now, but we had to cancel it. That's terrible. What happened? We don't know. We think him and Matt might have collided, but it was second song into a packed beachy. It was like a Splendor pre-show. And Scott's just on the ground, and we're like, shit. And then, he had to get stretchered off by the ambulance, and it was pretty wild. But this weekend was our first time getting back together. And right. He's doing well. He's getting better? He's getting better. Excellent. But we'll hopefully get back to the UK again as soon as possible, and I think we'll have a few Australia shows kind of at the end of the year. There's a few lined up, but
nice.
Maybe we'll do another tour.
You want to tour Australia. Fantastic. Well, that's excellent. So, look, if you've got any tour dates to announce, please let me know. I'm going to give you a plug in the Production Talk podcast community so everybody can hear about it. Yeah, nice one. Tell me more about your instruments, your amps, your pedals. Are you happy to share the secrets that make your guitar sound? Absolutely. There's not too many secrets. Okay, no, that's fine. I'm not really fussy with tone, because a lot of the time I figure that, like, in a smallish venue,
most people are there just to have fun.
Yeah.
And any form of distortion is probably going to do, or like any form of fuzz will do its job. So I'm not too picky in that sense. Like, someone's probably drunk, they just want to hear a distorted guitar they can dance to.
Cool.
Yeah, like I've got heaps of pedals. Over the years, my main one's been, it was pretty much, I was a big fan of Muse through school, and I pretty much wanted to buy every pedal Matt Bellamy had, so I got a Fuzz Factory, Digitech Lemmy, Line 60L4. And then, yeah, I've got this like Tube Screamer kind of copy thing. It was by Earthquaker Devices. It's like every Tube Screamer, like kind of 6 versions of it. So it's like an overdrive, and then it's got another overdrive in it that gives you more distortion than a boost as well. So it's great for live, so you can have a kind of different gain stages, really, for different songs. I've taken this off my board for now, but I started using Ableton as a guitar effect as well. I'd have
right.
I think Orange make a pedal, which is an interface. So it goes through and you hit it, and it goes into your computer, or it goes to your sound card, and then you can have any effect on there. And then I've got another MIDI controller, which would, I think there's 6 buttons, and it can send like MIDI messages to the macros in Ableton. So you can pretty much do anything you want.
Wow, that sounds really techy.
It's a lot of fun. I haven't quite found a home for it yet.
Yeah, right.
But I plan to make that a big part of the sound.
Cool. And what guitars do you play?
Mainly a Telecaster is probably my main one. I've got a Strat, a Jazz, Master, a Starcaster as well.
Okay.
And an SG.
Oh, I love SGs. How good are
nice.
they? Yeah, nice.
I've got from when my parents used to move through music shops, my dad's got this 1970s Guild acoustic, which he's like gifted to me, and it's amazing. There's always a song written, like waiting for me every time I pick it up.
Nice.
Something magical about it.
Yeah, cool.
I'm really rough on all my guitars apart from that one. I'm just like, there's something special about that.
Cool.
Yeah, we haven't used like amps really for years. Like, we've been using mainly Guitar Rig.
Oh, okay, even live?
No. Oh, Matt he's got an amp sim, but I like to have an amp live for feedback and weird stuff.
Okay.
There's a song where it was in Man You Want Me to Be. It was one of the first songs we did with Shrami. We just weren't happy with the bridge. Like, it feels just a bit half-assed to us, we think now. So instead of that, we just make noise pretty much. It's this huge build-up section. And I usually kind of take my guitar off and just put it near the amp, and it's just feedbacking. And then I try to it like goes into a delay, and it's like oscillating as well. So it's a mixture of feedbacking guitar and oscillating delay. And it's like a delay with a sweep. So I try to turn the sweep into a like synced tempo with Fraser's hi-hats, which are doing 16ths at the time.
Oh, wow.
So it's totally wild, but it's really fun to try get it right, because every time it's different. But that's a way of using pedals unorthodox.
Nice.
It was in Leeds when we played. This old guy came up to me after the show. He was like, maybe he was 60 or something. He's like, I've been going to shows for like 40 years and I've never seen someone play the guitar like that. And I'm like, cool.
Excellent.
I'm not sure if it's playing it, but it's hitting a button.
Yeah, really cool. Nice one. And what amp model do you like to play?
I've got a Orange Rockaverb 50.
Oh, nice.
I skipped a school trip at school, so to take the money from that and put it towards an amp. And then later I bought a Fender Deluxe Reverb, I think it is.
Oh, wow.
It's a real nice amp.
They sound fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I've got a fairly high price tag, but the sound is beautiful.
It was weirdly secondhand. I got it through Byron Music.
Oh, cool.
This was a few years ago. The guy who used to own it worked for my dad for a bit.
Oh, did you get a good deal?
Yeah, so he would always give us a good discount. But
nice.
he would always lend us guitars as well. So if I was like, oh, I'm thinking about getting this guitar, he would be like, take it home for the weekend. And I'll be like, you just end up buying
Of course
so
you
many
do.
guitars. One time I took, the Telly and Jazz home to choose one, and I bought them both.
Oh, really?
So I've definitely cut back now, because I'm like, a lot of guitars just sound the same, really, in a way. Like, it's a hard thing because it's this weird psychological thing where, like, there's a slight difference, but it's doing a certain job.
Yes.
Like, the only real difference I've found with my guitars is the Starcaster. It's got a certain warmth that can't reach the brightness of a Telly. But if you dull the treble on the Telly right down, you can almost get it to sound like the Starcaster.
Almost. Okay.
So it's like, yeah, that's the only limitation I've really found with my guitars.
Well, you obviously know your instruments really well. I can imagine this could be really useful on stage if if your strings break and you need to just quickly swap to another.
Yeah, usually I bring two.
Yeah.
Thankfully in the UK I didn't break any strings, where normally I'd break a lot of strings.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Nice one.
That's the worst, when it's like, you really know your set so well, but then it's like if a string breaks, suddenly you have to start transposing.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder work.
Oh, definitely, yes. Mike, let me just change the subject a little bit. What advice would you have for younger musicians who are starting these days? What mistakes did you do that, others can avoid? What can other people learn from you who are basically right at the beginning of their musical career?
It's a good one. I reckon trust yourself is a big one.
Please explain.
I was working with, I think he's like 20, maybe 21. His name's Zam. Like, that's his artist name. Brian is his first name. He is from the Philippines originally. I think he moved out here 2017-ish. And then we're working on a song, and it was like, this is great. This is cool. This is a lot of fun. And he was saying like, oh, he was trying to come up with a bio or something. And he's like, oh, I'm not sure what's about me. And I'm like, dude, like, your story is so interesting. You've moved here from the Philippines. You came and watched us play. And then he said that watching us perform inspired him to, like, take his abilities, because he was playing flute and a little bit of guitar before and singing a little bit. But he was like, I want to do this. Like, I want to do music. And then, yeah, like from that, he reached out to me to see if I'd be interested to help him, and then kind of produce music for him and write music and do that sort of thing. So, yeah, from his perspective, he didn't have that of an interesting story, but I was like, this is an interesting story. Like, your life is interesting. Just because you're living it every day doesn't mean it's not interesting. Like, let's take a step back, and you've got stuff going on.
I see. So, yeah, right. It took basically your angle. He needed to see his life through your lens to understand that there actually was something worth sharing.
Yeah, definitely. There was something definitely marketable about him, and just he had an interesting story to tell.
Cool.
And I think, like, a lot of, I would have done this as well, but comparing yourself to, like, so many other artists as well, being like,
self-doubt.
Yeah, being like, you're listening to someone who's done this for maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
They've got infinite amount of money, infinite amount of time to make a record. And then you're coming in, maybe you've played your instrument for 2 years, and you're expecting yourself to make that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that can't happen.
The voice in your head would just be like, that's not that. Even if it was that, you would be like, no, that's not it.
Yeah. In situations like this, I always recommend to do some research and find the earliest records of these, big idols.
That's a great idea.
And see how they sounded when they were at the beginning of their career. And, chances are it's just another demo that was rough around the edges.
I think, like, it was interesting when I was driving here, because I hadn't listened to the EP WHARVES did in ages. And I'm sure you know as well, when you've listened to something over and over and over, it stops sounding like music, and you just it becomes this thing that's, you don't really have proper sight on it, and you forget what it sounds like just to listen to as a listener.
Yes.
So I was driving up here to listening to the EP, and I heard so many mistakes in it, like just little things where I'm like, oh, I should have done that different or this different. But I'm like, no, it's done. That's fine. Yeah. It's a learning thing. Now I can look back at that and go.
Make a peace with it. And it was just, it's like a photograph. It's just like who you were at that time. It doesn't mean that's who you are today.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And no one else will be judging it that hard except me.
Yeah, of course.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Look, but pretty much everybody I speak to shares the same story, that, we are always our own harshest critics. Definitely. And, sometimes full of self-doubt. And I guess that's what unites us creatives in many ways. We all share that.
I've got I've been trying to do a few other projects, like solo things. There's like an electronic project I'm trying to get more going, but I keep having that self-doubt because I'm like kind of singing more on it as well, which I've never done.
Yeah.
So it's that thing of being like, no, it's fine, just release it. But
just get it out there.
Yeah, I just need to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know once it's done, it's fine. But it's just that weird barrier you have to go against just to take the jump.
Yeah, of course.
And once you do it, it's worth it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. All right, so for the next year, your band is going to tour Australia, you said?
We'll
you
tour
are
Australia,
thinking
probably UK.
About the UK again?
Hopefully.
And hopefully another album as well?
Aiming to do a full-length
album, yeah.
But no idea on timeline yet.
Of course. Well, that's really good goals, so please keep me updated, and I will definitely promote all of this through the podcast channels. Mike, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. It's great to have that chat with you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Cheers, mate. Thank you so much, Mike Watson, guitar player of WHARVES. Please make sure to head over to their official website. The link is, of course, in the show notes. It's wharvesband.com. You can, of course, also scroll down on the website and find all the social media channels. However, I recommend you go to Bandcamp. Again, the link is in the show notes, and buy their records. Check them all out. Amazing music. I really hope you can support a local band. All right, thanks. That's all for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends and fellow musicians. You can also head over to Facebook and join our Production Talk podcast Facebook community to have a chat and find out more information on the episodes. That's all for today. Thank you, everybody. I shall speak to you again next week. Bye for now.